This is amazing. I mean, over there, we are currently looking at tens of thousands of people pouring across the harbour bridge, and it was literally shaking as we were on the hikoi.
Are you confident that these annual meetings are achieving anything?
We've come through 6 months of pretty tough time, and a normal winter is like that anyway.
Treasurer Jim Chalmers, he gave a speech last night in which he said nobody wins in a trade war, but we've got more at stake than most, and I think he's referring to the relationship with China. And then, of course, there's what everybody is facing economically under Trump policies, potentially higher inflation, higher interest rates and a higher US dollar, and that's going to impact everyone in New Zealand as well.
Welcome to the Weekly Wrap, where we go over the top video stories from the past week. First up, thousands gathered on Auckland's Harbour Bridge this week as part of Hikoi Mō Te Tiriti, a nationwide protest opposing the proposed Treaty Principles Bill and other government policies impacting Māori. MBR's Te Ao Māori editor Mike McRoberts was there.
Thousands, maybe tens of thousands, walking across Auckland's Harbour Bridge in a powerful demonstration against the proposed Treaty Principles Bill. The hikoi, known as Hikoi Mō Te Tiriti, has become a national symbol of resistance to policies viewed as an attack on the rights enshrined in Te Tiriti o Waitangi. Among the steady stream of people, Greens co-leader Chloe Swarbrick.
This is amazing. I mean, over there, we are currently looking at tens of thousands of people pouring across the harbour bridge, and it was literally shaking as we were on the hikoi, and that, my friend, is the power of the people.
Yeah, it's been a solid 2 hours of people coming across the harbour bridge. I guess this day, day 3, coming into Tāmaki Makaurau was always going to be a pivotal one.
Yeah. And again, I think what we see here with people mobilising and an incredible display of unity, bringing the many threads of different kaupapa for people, for planet, for Toitu Te Tiriti, for he whakaputanga, for the kind of world that we can create if we're all working together. Demonstrates an incredible a kind of challenge to not only our government but to our institution of Parliament as well.
The hikoi was meant to coincide with the Treaty Principles Bill being introduced to Parliament next week. But a last-minute change saw the David Seymour-led bill land at Parliament last Thursday, 2 weeks early. A move seen by some in Māoridom as a blatant attempt to lessen the impact of this hikoi. Among those outspoken was Labour's Willie Jackson.
Our people are sick of this government and they're sick of the continual attacks on Māori. And what you see today is you're seeing people from all races, all political parties come along and protest. Oh no, this is magnificent.
And this crowd, despite the fact that the Treaties Principles Bill has already been submitted.
Yeah, it's been submitted and I'm going to be speaking on it tomorrow. I'll be speaking... I think I'm speaking straight after Seymour, so I'm looking forward to giving him a real boot tomorrow because I'm sick of his lies with regards to what the treaty says. I'm sick of him saying that the articles apply to everyone. That's a special contract and relationship with Māori.
Recognising that special contract between Crown and Māori was reason enough for some non-Māori to attend today's hikoi. Why are you supporting it?
Because I don't see why we should create division when the rest of the world looks at us and admires what we've done and what we've created in this country as one people, and we recognise our Indigenous people. So I think the government should be focused on what it was voted in for, which is fix the economy and sort out education and crime and help the environment and all those things. Why create division when it's not needed?
It's quite a statement, shutting down, part of the harbour bridge, isn't it, and walking over.
Well, it shows, and it's good to see there's lots of Pākehā as well, because I think there's a lot of Pākehā in this country who can't understand why this is even an issue. Let's focus on uniting people, not dividing people.
This bridge crossing part of the Hikoi Mō Te Tiriti, the hikoi for the treaty, has been going for nearly 2 hours now, and there is no end in sight to the thousands that are still walking over this bridge. They'll now split up into two groups. One will go to Ihu Mātā and the other will go to Takaparafo, or Bastion Point. The size of the crowd and the fact that it travelled over the harbour bridge, reminiscent of the 1975 Land March led by Dame Whina Cooper, and a similar motivation today to be part of history.
What motivated? I think it was just like in 204 in 1975 when Whenakupa and Hani Harawera was seabed and foreshore. And I says, I couldn't go on those ones because I was working. And now that I'm retired, I thought this is an opportunity to come and support whānau and for Māori as well.
And you look back behind you there, you see there's still amazing. Thousands and thousands streaming across.
Absolutely amazing. And also to Hikoi over the Auckland harbour bridge. To me, it's just, I'll never do it again probably, but in my lifetime, but who knows?
Because you're right, I mean, it conjures up those images of Dame Whina back in 1975.
Exactly. Yeah, I was probably a bit young then, but I still can remember, that hikoi and even Honi Harawira as the seabed and foreshore hikoi. So just to be part of this hikoi is absolutely amazing.
As the treaty principles bill comes under consideration by a select committee, Willie Jackson isn't ruling out a one-on-one debate with David Seymour.
I have been asked to debate him. Some of my crew want me to, some don't. I think I will, but probably not quite yet. I might wait another couple of months yet.
So that could still be on the cards, a debate?
Oh, I think so. I think his lies have to be pointed out. I think he needs to be dealt to in terms of, I'm talking about in a straight debate. He needs to be challenged because, he tries to make out what are these principles, who are these judges? Those judges were some of the most pragmatic people in New Zealand society. And they thought, well, we need to interpret the treaty for a modern New Zealand, and I'm proud of what they came up with.
As this hikoi weaves its way south, each region will likely bring in new supporters and new stories, culminating at Parliament, where demonstrators hope to make their voices heard directly. David Seymour wanted a dialogue on the principles of the treaty. It feels like Māori have spoken today.
Yeah, and look, if I can just take a step back, Māori have been calling for a constitutional conversation since way before I was born. A constitutional conversation does not look like one version of things prescribed by one guy and one minor political party putting it on the table and giving the country or the parliament a binary yes or no. A constitutional conversation would look like, for example, what was envisioned in Maitiki Mai and many other Māori researchers and academics have put forward through institutions like the Waitangi Tribunal. There are so many ways for us to have a constructive conversation as opposed to a polarising one. And unfortunately, that's what this government has been putting on the table. But despite those attempts at division, what you see here today is incredible unity.
Leaders and ministers from 195 countries have gathered in Azerbaijan for the 29th United Nations climate change talks. But will any progress be made? Our political editor Brent Edwards spoke with Climate Change Minister Simon Watts ahead of his junket.
Climate Change Minister Simon Watts is heading to the latest UN climate change talks in Azerbaijan, and he joins me now. Before you get there, you're going to go to London, I think, to talk to insurers. Will that be raising the issues around insurance cover as we look at the prospects of the impacts of climate change here in terms of, low-lying land, coastal inundation?
Yeah, climate adaptation is a major priority for this government. We've finished the inquiry, and when I'm in London, I'll be meeting alongside chief executives from two of our largest insurers here in New Zealand with the reinsurers in the UK to give them an overview in terms of the work that we have underway here in New Zealand around adaptation, around our broader framework and what we're doing in that space. New Zealand is a significant buyer of insurance in the global market. And we also are a high risk in terms of reinsurance. We're not the highest, but we are up there. And so it is important to ensure that we're communicating with those reinsurers and letting them know what our plans are in terms of the future. And we've had some really good feedback already from some of the discussions that I've had with some of those players. They're impressed by the proactive work that New Zealand's doing in this space, and we're looking forward to sharing a little bit more about that with them.
How soon, though, before that framework will be finalised and you get legislation through? Because people are still waiting for that right to give them a guide about how they should deal with land that might be seen as marginal.
Yeah, well, policy work is currently underway. We had the Select Committee report reported back in the last month. It is my view that we will look to progress those policy discussions in the first half of next year. It is absolutely the view that we want to keep this work moving at pace, but the reality is that we need to make sure that the work we do is done appropriately. It's a complex and challenging issue. We need to ensure that it is enduring, and that's the work that we have currently underway. So I'll be able to give some more updates in the new year in regards to timeline, but it is a major priority for us.
Now, COP29 then obviously is looking at ways of continuing to bring emissions down. Are you confident that these annual meetings are achieving anything?
I am, and it is important to get the countries across the globe. There's very few opportunities to get all 195 countries together on a specific topic, including climate change. The focus is around both mitigation, but also adaptation is coming in to conversation quite a lot more, particularly with the impacts in the Caribbean and also in the Pacific of those implications. So we'll be focused around a number of key areas. And I'll be leading one of those, which is in regards to global cooperation.
And you're also going to be co-chairing a session on the carbon markets. I mean, what's your focus there? And on that, I mean, how confident are you now that the New Zealand ETS is fit for purpose?
Well, firstly, the work that we'll be doing around the New Zealand ETS has been focused around ensuring that we have a credible market, a clear platform and a clear policy platform and stability. And from our view, that has been heading in the right direction, and we'll continue to monitor that. In regards to the Article 6 co-facilitation that I'm doing with the Minister from Singapore, that's ensuring that we have a cooperation agreement between countries across the globe, and we'll be co-facilitating that. The key outcome is we want to get agreement to that Article 6 negotiation at this COP. It's been discussed for many years, and we're progressing well in regards to that.
So would that allow for a global market in carbon credits then to be shared between countries? And
that's right, and ensure that we've got some standardisation in terms of the way in which those cooperation agreements operate between different countries, mechanisms to ensure that when countries are entering into that, there's standardised rules around that, and also the ability to make sure that when you measure it, there is a like-for-like comparison across countries in the world. That's important, but it is a key driver of increasing the amount of finance flowing within that area, and it's also a key opportunity for countries as well. So we're working very hard to land that.
Would that have implications then for the ETS here? Would there need to be further changes to the ETS here, or do you think that's in line with that global?
Yeah, the New Zealand ETS is very mature, and it's unlikely that there'll be any implications in regards to the New Zealand ETS. What it does provide is that opportunities potentially for New Zealand and other countries to look at how do we accelerate some of the emissions reductions infrastructure programs that we have in play, and also in other jurisdictions. So that work's underway, and we'll see how we go when we get onto the ground.
I mean, the criticism here is obviously, as you head off to this meeting, is that the coalition government has removed some of the initiatives that the previous government had in place to try and cut emissions, and that you're reversing the offshore oil and gas exploration ban. I mean, are you confident that the ETS as it now picks up all of the heavy lifting that some of those policies might have done in the past?
Well, the ETS covers all sectors except for agriculture, and that is doing the heavy lifting.
But is it sending the right signals?
We've seen significant return of stability into that market. That wasn't the case under prior governments, and so that is now in place, and we're seeing stability. But the key focus for us is ensuring that for New Zealanders, that the government has a clear plan that enables us to hit our targets and our domestic targets, and we'll be publishing that plan in the next month or so, which will provide clarity to New Zealanders that this government does have a plan and that we're on track to meet our domestic targets. And then the challenge remains in terms of how we're progressing against that plan, and that's the challenge that's in front of us for the remainder of this term.
I think you're also lobbying, I guess, to have Australia host the conference in 2026 in conjunction with the Pacific. How important would that be for the region?
Look, I think that'll be significant for the Pacific region. The Pacific is already dealing with the impacts of climate change. We need to ensure that we have a focus globally on the challenges that we have in our region. The Pacific region is a significantly important region, and also geopolitically as well. And so the ability for Australia to host that in conjunction with Pacific Island countries and New Zealand is going to be very, very important. So we're hopeful that we see positive decisions being made at COP in regards to that.
The latest forecasts don't seem to hold out much hope that the world will meet that target set in Paris around 1.5. I mean, what hope do you have, say, from this year's conference that it will lead to further impetus in reducing emissions globally?
Look, the ambition in relation to the 1.5 is driven by Pacific Island countries, of which New Zealand is part of. And it is an ambition that we share, and it is an ambition that we back. It is absolutely the case that it is challenging in regards to the broader environment, but that doesn't take away from the fact that the ambition around 1.5 is embedded and based upon the science, and that is the position that we hold as well as a government. So we're doing everything that we can, but also importantly we need to work with other countries around the world that are bigger than us and more complex, that are able to ensure that they're also playing their part. And hence why you've seen significant engagement by this government with, for example, China, and also we'll be meeting with EU, and we're over there to ensure that we're all doing what we can.
This month's Dollars and Cents debates the health of idyllic Northland to assess whether the region is thriving, surviving or dying. Stick around as a panel discusses decades of chronic underinvestment in the region. Hello and welcome to Dollars and Cents. I'm Jonathan Mitchell. This month we head to the tropical far north to assess whether Northland is thriving, surviving or dying. Local businesses and iwi are hopeful the current government's economic agenda will benefit the region, but right now it's all about survival. To debate, Northland Chamber of Commerce President Tim Robinson, iwi leader Harry Burkhardt and Duke of Marlborough co-owner Ricky Kinnard. Ricky, first to you, how's business at the moment?
Yeah, really good. Encouraging signs for summer. We've come through 6 months of pretty tough time, and a normal winter is like that anyway. But the Duke's book is chocker. I think we're running at about 95% occupancy from November to about April next year. So that's good with lots of functions. In a normal year would be ecstatic, but we're quietly confident, and then we're waiting for the rest of the region to fill the same rates through motels and stuff. So really confident, having a good month of October and November, and the signs are looking pretty good.
What's winter been like?
Rubbish. To be fair, winter's low normally. But we've had some headwinds with the Endurance closure, bit of cyclone hangovers, etc. And the cost of living crisis we certainly see through the front door. But on the plus side, we've had quite a lot of Kiwis coming and staying. We've had a lot of functions. And the active side of our book for summer is bigger than ever. So we're probably about 20% down through the trade side, through the front door at our restaurants, which give us volume. And that's offset by 10% increase in functions and fun. So we'll take 10% down in a normal year like this.
Tim, what are businesses telling you about right here, right now?
Yeah, look, obviously I'll start wearing my retail hat here. So certainly sort of retail, or here in Whangarei in particular, is actually really quite tough at the moment. I'm regularly talking to business owners who are between 20 and 30% down, so which is a big chunk of change for the kind of margins of these people that we're talking about. I know certainly for us, our little tiny business, we are very quiet at the moment, and one of the metrics that I have is just the physical number of people coming through the door on any given day, and we've certainly over the last probably 4 to 6 weeks, we're down something like about 50% in foot traffic count. So certainly, things are very, very quiet. Really interested in Ricky's feedback there, because I think probably from a retail perspective, the outlook is actually not very optimistic at the moment. There's a real sense that we've potentially got another, or could be even another 12 months of headwinds ahead of us. I think the US election result has put a bit of a shiver up people's spines, given that as a region we do have quite a heavy reliance on horticulture and agriculture. And some of those exports are going to get caught up in a bit of a trade war if Trump goes through with some of his tariff threats. I guess there's a bit of nervousness that income to the region could be impacted by that, and of course that has a big impact for us in the retail sector in particular. From the money go around, that happens as the export earnings are impacted.
Harry, let's bring you in now. Can you respond to what Tim's just said? How are you thinking?
So if I reflect of some of my direct roles in the commercial space, so my area running farms, forestry, horticulture, visit experiences, each one of them are really tough. And so commodity pricing is below the cost of production. We're still managing farms that are capital intensive but low returns on investment. We've been impacted by a lower cost for sheep and lambs. So if you're in a incremental business where you have to manage advantages at the edges, each one of those can impact you quite significantly. And then in our visit experience spaces, again, we suffer from the tyranny of visitors not travelling as far north as Paihia, for example, and we've got a different offering to what Ricky has, and so that consumer, which hasn't returned to New Zealand, by the way, is also not found its way north. So we've got a whole lot of constraints in our visit experience space.
What are some of the challenges heading into summer then?
Yeah, so if you take our visitor experience space, they're traditionally 6-month businesses. So we've got to make the best that we can with the visitors that are coming through. So summer's good opportunity to capture that. Ngāti Kuri also operates the campsites at Purapura, Kapawairua and Rāroa beach. So we get this flood of New Zealanders and some overseas visitors between December the 20th to let's say Waitangi Day, and then it falls off a cliff. So it's about being able to grab the revenues and the margins and the opportunity you've got. So there's lots of things structurally we're all trying to work out to make it smoother, the edges or long tail, all that stuff like that. And for Ricky and I and Tim, it's our wheelhouse, by the way.
Ricky, I'm just wondering about your thoughts on the signals you're getting from Wellington, from government, about roading upgrades, fast-track initiatives.
Yeah, I guess there's two parts to it, and Tim and Harry and I, and actually a lot of our friends up here all wear many hats. So the roading and all of the infrastructural stuff, it's been on the table for a long, long time, and we're starting to see some movement. To be fair, the movement's born out of pain. So when you get your State Highway 1 and other roads being knocked out, we get hamstrung big time. So the noises are good, and there's a collective want and drive. We're seeing that, but there is an expiry date on the delivery. So these sorts of things need to happen quickly and now. So we're all in it together, but we need to drop our shoulder and make it happen quicker. So that's the long and medium term. But the short term, obviously, we're on our own now. Your business as usual outside of COVID. So what Harry saying, the foot traffic and all of those things are really real. And we've got to make the most of the summer like every other summer. So, whilst Aloha and love from our people in Wellington and friends right now, our challenge is to make the most out of summer. Some of the pluses are the labour market seems to be opening up a little bit, and we can see more people coming through the front door, whereas through COVID that was a genuine pain point. So we should be able to serve people, but it's that top line that that we need. We need the revenue. So yeah. So long term, yeah, we're working all together, but it needs to happen quicker. Right now, we need to put money in the bank, pay the bills, and make the best of the summer.
Tim, what are the opportunities from opening up that new state highway, that connection?
Yeah, look, I think one of the really interesting things that I had the privilege of doing earlier this year was actually going down to a little bit of a forum that the Waikato Chamber had put on, and they were really just, I suppose, giving a bit of a showcase in terms of what happens when you build great infrastructure. And because really what they were highlighting wasn't so much the inland port at Cambridge, it was all the ancillary activity happening around that inland port that were really, I suppose, building that story around to sort of say, this is what happens when, the minute that business hears there's an investment coming in infrastructure, they will start to invest straight away. And I guess the point that the Waikato Chamber were making was saying, look, those businesses made those decisions 10 years ago when they first announced they were building that expressway. They didn't wait until the expressway was built before they came and invested. They made sure that they were on the ground floor, they'd invested, and so that once that road was open for business, so were they. And I think that, to Ricky's point, which is a really, really interesting one, the challenge for us as businesses here is saying, how do we sort of make sure that we keep ourselves viable and sustainable until that I guess that highly resilient infrastructure is available to us? Because, the thing for us is that, we know after the closures of the Brynderwyns what an incredible impact that had on all of our businesses collectively. None of us came out of that one on the right side of the ledger. So we know how critical it is, not just to get obviously bodies in from a tourism perspective, but just simply to get standard goods and services in and out. And I think one of the things that it's highlighted, of course, is that if we're serious about growing the activities out at Northport and out at Marsden, without a highly resilient road and preferably with rail as well, your businesses, particularly your larger businesses, aren't going to come and invest anytime soon because they can't guarantee that they can actually transact in a way which makes sense. So I think for us, back to Ricky's point, I think there's been a bit of fist pumping in the air at some of the announcements, and it's great, and there's nothing like a bit of positivity to help all of us as business people. But I think that the thing that we're just really sort of focused on right now is the forecast, long-term forecast for the summer is great. We're sort of certainly hoping that we can all sort of capitalise. Back to Harry's comment before. Make some hay while that sun's shining, bright and hot, because we're going to need that for the next sort of couple of 3 years, while those big infrastructure projects get started and head towards completion.
And you can watch that full video right now on mbr.co.nz. Over the ditch, Australia is in an awkward position of having an ambassador in Washington who was called Donald Trump a, quote, village idiot, and a Prime Minister who once said Trump, quote, scares the shit out of me. Australian correspondent Lachlan Cahoon and co-editor Hamish McNichol with this.
Treasurer Jim Chalmers, he gave a speech last night in which he said nobody wins in a trade war, but we've got more at stake than most. And I think he's referring to the relationship with China. And then, of course, there's what everybody is facing economically under Trump policies, potentially higher inflation, higher interest rates and a higher US dollar. And that's going to impact everyone in New Zealand as well.
Governments around the world are trying to understand the implications of Donald Trump's return to the White House, and his second presidency raises particular questions for Australia. Lachlan, is there a sense that Australia has been wrong-footed in some ways by the Trump victory?
Well, Hamish, I think that despite the spin, there's no question that a Labor government would be more comfortable with a Democratic president. I mean, Albanese once said that the prospect of Trump scared the shit out of him. And our former Prime Minister, who's now the ambassador in Washington, Kevin Rudd, described Donald Trump as a village idiot. So these comments have been very much walked back in the last week or so. But Biden and Albanese, they had a very good relationship. They continued the AUKUS partnership, which was, of course, started under the previous coalition government. But they extended that into the areas of critical minerals and also cooperation on climate change and clean energy. So the two of them, Biden and Albanese, pressed for more engagement in the Pacific. The US, under AUKUS, was a close strategic partner for Australia. There's no certainty that Trump will be the same. I mean, he wants to confront China economically, but it's not clear if he's prepared to do that militarily, and that's a big plank of the AUKUS alliance.
Yeah, where does this leave the AUKUS alliance?
Well, it's very unclear at this stage what Trump's attitude to it will be. I mean, we're supposed to be getting 3 Virginia-class nuclear submarines built in America by the 2030s. One wonders if that timetable could slip because US shipyards are already behind on delivering the planned 2 subs a year under their schedule. They're completing 1.2 subs a year right now. So does that mean that Australia becomes a lower priority under the sort of America first sort of ethos? We're also building 5 nuclear submarines here. So there's a massive technology transfer for the United States, which is involved in that. We're investing in that. I think we've put in about $3 billion already into that. But what's the status of that going forward with Trump? We don't know 100%. The Critical Minerals Pact, that is a big advantage to the United States because we have so much in the way of rare earths and critical minerals in Australia. So they'll probably continue with that. But it's the clean energy and climate change aspects of the pact which would have to be in doubt under a philosophy of drill, baby, drill. So beyond that, I mean, the big question is about the defence posture in the Pacific. Will they be more isolationist, and what will that mean for us?
The other likely impact, which every country is trying to come to terms with at the moment, is tariffs. But I guess for Australia specifically, both on Australia and China as well, how are those impacts being assessed?
Yeah, well, it's probably on China that the biggest impacts will come. I think the tariffs on Australia, if they do happen, they'll probably be at the lower end, around 10% perhaps. I mean, Trump is a tariff man. The direct impact of the tariffs on us is likely to be minimal. I mean, we run a trade deficit with the US. It's around $27 billion in their favour per year. So Trump will like that. And they take only about 5% of our exports. The big question is the extent to which the tariffs might hurt the Chinese economy, and that'll hurt us. It'll impact on the demand for our exports, particularly iron ore and coal. I mean, but there have been some suggestions that we could become almost a dumping ground for cheap Chinese goods that they won't be able to sell in the United States if they really ramp the tariffs up. So that's been presented as an advantage for us. Treasurer Jim Chalmers, he gave a speech last night in which he said nobody wins in a trade war, but we've got more at stake than most. And I think he's referring to the relationship with China. And then, of course, there's what everybody is facing economically under Trump policies. Potentially higher inflation, higher interest rates, and a higher US dollar, and that's going to impact everyone in New Zealand as well.
Do you think Trump's re-election will have any impact on Australian politics as well?
I really think it will. We're going to an election next year, and it's looking really tight between the coalition and Labor. Peter Dutton this week, for the first time in the news poll, was ahead of Albanese as Prime Minister, preferred Prime Minister. So there's no question that the centre right in Australia will be emboldened by the Trump victory. And there's also the issue that given the high inflationary environment that we've seen around the world, incumbents in a lot of developed nations have been in trouble. We saw that in the UK, we saw that in France, we've just seen it in the US, and to an extent we saw it in New Zealand as well. So Dutton's coalition, even money, chance to win. And I think that we'll see them employ many of the tactics that were used by the Trump campaign on questions such as immigration, hot button issue in Australia, scepticism on climate change, and they'll be reaching out to working class people who've been affected by inflation in very much the same way that the Republicans did in the US, I think.
Interesting indeed. Thanks, Lachlan. And thanks again to you for joining us. Our news team is back from 5 a.m. tomorrow with the latest business news you can use on mbr.co.nz. And join Mike McRoberts from 5:30 p.m. tomorrow for a look at the day's top stories. See you next week.